all of your favorite recipes.
Simply Food.
You should know by now that you're in for a treat.
Simply Food.
There's no other channel where you'd rather be.
Simply Food.
Seafood, pasta, cakes, and pies. Sing and laugh and even cry. Like and share and hit subscribe. Simply Food by TY.
Alright, I'm back. Alright, now look. Today is the day that I'm going to show you guys how I made skinless all beef hot dogs. This is something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. You guys already know that I said in the year 2025 I wanted to limit how often I'm going to the grocery store and buying meats or like overly processed foods. I'm not saying that I'm eliminating them all. I would just like to limit how often I'm doing it. So if I have a meat grinder and if I have a sausage stuffer and I have all these things, why not make use of them? And listen, I understand before you guys come down in the comment section and say, not all of us have these things. This is what I would say. Look into investing in one. It will end up paying for itself. And let me tell you something. If you buy your meats in bulk from, butchers and things like that and break them down yourself, it's going to be a whole lot cheaper, you guys. And, if you're a person that enjoys eating sausages and bacon and hot dogs and things along those lines, when you make it yourself, you know exactly what's in it and you will feel no guilt about enjoying it. So come along with me on this journey and let's go make some hot dogs, shall we? So before we get too far into everything, let me show you guys what I'm going to be using in the video. So of course, we're going to need a meat grinder. The attachments I have in my freezer, I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about that momentarily. Like I said, I'm going to be making skinless beef hot dogs today. So in order for it to still be shaped like a hot dog, I'm going to be using the cellulose casings. This is the 25 millimeter. I just ordered these right off of Amazon. You're going to need a scale and a bowl so that you can measure out the spices. When you get into the world of like curing meats and things like that, it's really important to make sure that you're weighing stuff out, especially the curing salt, because, it can be toxic if you use too much. So you want to make sure that you're using the appropriate amounts. Now, this is my sausage stuffer here. This is the size that I'm going to be using today because I just want a standard size hot dog. I don't want anything too big. And then I also have my sous vide here. Now, in regards to cooking them sous vide, I'm actually going to be partially smoking them and then finishing them off in the sous vide. Now, the benefit of doing that is I will be able to get that smoky flavor, but I won't run the risk of overcooking the hot dogs in the smoker. By finishing them off in here, I can have the water perfectly controlled as far as temperature-wise. And then when I take them out, they'll still be nice and juicy without all the fat melted. So I just wanted to give y'all a rundown of all of the things that I'm going to be using in the video before we start to get over to the actual ingredients itself. And let me show you guys where I have all of the attachments that I will be using for the meat grinder. Okay, so I've said this once before, but anytime you're working with any type of ground meats, whether you're just grounding meat or making sausages, it's extremely important to make sure that the meat stays below 35 degrees. Because as you are grinding the meat, it's going to naturally start to warm up, and you do not want the fat within the meat to start melting. If that happens, your meat grinder is going to turn into a mess, and it's also going to start to alter the texture of your meat, and you do not want that. So to prohibit that from happening, put all of this stuff in the freezer on a tray at least an hour or two, or you can do it overnight. The colder, the better. So that way when we start to grind the meat, not only will the meat be partially frozen, but also all of these attachment pieces will be nice and cold as well. Now for the spices, I'm going to be using curing salt, Prague powder #1. Just a rule of thumb, anytime you're curing something or dry aging something less than 30 days, it's always going to be #1. Only if it's 30 days or longer will you be using Prague powder #2. You're also going to need dry milk powder, white pepper, garlic powder, coriander powder, smoked paprika, ground mustard, celery seed, coarse kosher salt, marjoram, turbinado sugar, and then I haven't quite decided yet if I'm going to be adding in the addition of mace and or nutmeg. So when I get to start adding in all the spices, and if I choose to add it, I will make sure that I let you guys know. But these are all of the spices that we're going to be working with in the video. So you see that? You see that? You see that? Don't ask me for the damn ingredient list. Now come on. Alrighty, y'all. So like I said, I'm going to be making all beef hot dogs today. I went to my local Amish market and picked up these chuck roast. I'm not going to be adding in any additional fat, #1, primarily because, like I said, I'm going to be making all beef. Typically, sometimes you'll see people do beef and then the addition of pork fat, but I'm keeping this all beef. And the marbling on this actually already looks great. I'm kind of going for like an 80-20 ratio, so I'm not really concerned about there not being enough fat. But what I want to do right now is I want to chop this down into small little cubes so that I'll be able to feed it through the mouth of my slicer later on down the line. Now, this is about 4 pounds worth of chuck roast here. I definitely did not want to start off with, making a massive amount just in case there's any adjustments to the recipe that I want to make. I found this recipe online, and the best thing about this particular recipe, and I'm going to put the name of the guy that where I found this recipe, is he has a calculator on there where you can put in the amount of meat that you're working with, and then it will automatically adjust what the spices need to be in order for it to turn out just perfect. So I absolutely love that. Now I'm cutting, like I said, I'm cutting all these down into smaller cubes because I'm going to place this meat in the freezer. I want to make sure that the fat built within the muscles of this stay nice and solid while I'm running it through the grinder. Hot dogs, just like bologna, is meat that's emulsified. So that means that this is going to get not only ran through the meat grinder, but it's also going to have to go through a food processor so that it turns kind of into like a mush, which is not going to look the prettiest, but you guys, that's what a hot dog is, So I'm going to finish chopping this down, and then when I come back, I'm going to plop this in the freezer for about 45 minutes, and then we can start grinding this meat down. See, like this right here, this fat that you see right here, this is the reason why I'm not concerned about adding in any additional fat, because I'm not chopping any of that away. I'm going to keep all of that. That's going to make sure that we end up with a juicy hot dog. So I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. Now, if you do get your meat and you see any weird like silver skin or, something like that, you can discard that. But fat in this situation is definitely good when you're working with all beef. And now that my meat is all chopped up, I've placed this on a flat pan. I'm going to place this in the freezer for roughly about 45 minutes, just until it gets firm enough so that way the fat stays nice and solid. Alrighty, y'all, so now we're going to start to add in our spices. So first, let me go on ahead and tear this bowl so we can lose the weight of that. And I want to add in 32 grams of coarse kosher salt. We're going to add in 5 grams of the curing salt. We're going to add in 5 grams of white pepper. We're going to go in with 11 grams of sugar, 4 grams of garlic powder, 5.5 grams of coriander powder, 5 grams of marjoram, 2 grams of celery seed, 15 grams of mustard powder or ground mustard, one and the same. We need 16 grams of smoked paprika. And lastly, we need 60 grams of the milk powder. And this is our binder. And if you want to keep it dairy-free, you can use potato starch, but I already had the dairy-free, the non-fat milk already on hand, so that's why I'm using it. All right, so now I'm just going to go in and give my spices a little mix. And again, you guys, this is my first time making these hot dogs. I don't be testing out recipes before I bring them to you. So, if I do this and find that I want to make some other adjustments, then I will. But for today, I'm just going to stick with the recipe and do what it called for. And I'm going to keep the milk powder separate. I'm going to add that in at a different time. But now I have all of my spices ready to go. And if you want to make sure that everything is nicely finely ground, you can run it through a processor if you want, but this is fine for me. This recipe also calls for 500 grams of water, so I'm going to place this in the refrigerator because, again, I want to make sure that everything stays nice and cold. And I decided that I did want to add in the addition of the nutmeg, so I'm adding in 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. Alrighty, and so before we get started, I'm going to start by running my meat through the coarse grind first, which is the bigger attachment. And again, you guys, I've had all of this in the freezer to keep everything nice and cold. So now we can just attach that right on. I have my meat right here. It's not completely frozen through, but it's firm enough that I don't have to worry about the fat melting in this first stage. And you never really want to start off a meat grinder with it empty, so I like to put a couple of pieces down in the chute first before I turn it on. Okay, and so right now I'm just going in and just checking the temperature of the meat. You want to make sure that it's well under 35. And since it's actually at 31 right now and I'm only working with 4 pounds, I'm not going to put this back in the refrigerator. I'm actually going to run this through a second time right now. But before I do that, I always like to unplug it first. But before I do that, I'm going to take this off. And now I'm going to switch it to the smaller blade. Because again, this is going to be an emulsified meat mixture. So I want to make it as small as I can. I'm going to actually do it through the smaller blade twice. So we can go on ahead and take this one off. And now I'm going to go in with the smaller one. And now let's run it through the smaller blade. Alrighty, you guys, so now that I've done the first pass through the smaller die, I'm going to place this back in the refrigerator for about another 20-30 minutes just to make sure that it's still nice and cold. And just a little tip, in order to get out the last little pieces of meat that you might have stuck in the grinder, just drop in a few ice cubes and that'll push it right on out. So I'm going to put this in the fridge for 30 minutes and then we're going to run it through this one more time. And now I'm running it through the last time, and as you can see, now you can see that that fat is blended in perfectly. It's coming out as individual strings, and I can tell that the fat is not melting. Everything is staying nice and cold. So I'm just going to finish this up, and then we'll be all done with the grinding part of the process as far as the meat grinder itself. Okay, so to emulsify your meat, you can go about it two different ways. One way being with the food processor, or you can use your KitchenAid, which I'm going to be doing today. I initially was going to use my food processor, but when I realized I was only working with 4 pounds of meat, I realized that I could use my KitchenAid because it's big enough to do so. So what I've done is I've added all of my meat to my KitchenAid. I'm going to turn this on a low speed. I'm going to gradually start to add in all of that ice cold water. As I add the water to it, the more it mixes around, the proteins are going to start to change, and it's going to become really nice and sticky and tacky. After I've added in the water, I'm going to start to add in all of my spices as well as that mix, the milk powder. Now, this process will take anywhere between 3 to 4 minutes. Adjust the speed as much as you need to, but keep an eye on it. Don't break your KitchenAid trying to rush this process. You're going to know when it's done when you're able to stick it to the bottom of your hand and hold it upside down and it sticks to the glove. Like I said, this can take anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes, but once it does that, you know that you're good to go. All right, y'all, so I have my attachment here on the bottom. This is the one that I'm going to be using today, and it's really important to note that once you start to put your mixture in here, that you're throwing it in with a little bit of force to eliminate any air pockets. You want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So I'm going to fill this up, and then I'll come back, and then we can start to fill them up with the casings. I have this clamp down here so that way once I start to jack it, it won't be rocking around and falling off. And all I simply have to do is just slide this attachment piece directly inside like so. And it locks right into place. And like I said, these are going to be skinless beef hot dogs. So I'm using the cellulose casings, the 25 millimeter. And like I said, these are permeable. So the smoke will get through them, but you will be removing these towards the end. And it's already tied off on one end. So for right now, all I'm going to do is just slide it right onto the mouth of it here. It's casing directly on here, nice and easy. And you don't need to worry about water or anything like that. And I'm going to tie this end off. And now that I can see that it's coming out, I'm going to apply just a little bit of pressure and just allow it to push out. Now, the good thing about this being a cellulose case is that it's going to be pretty difficult for this to kind of burst. Just nice and slow. You want to try to avoid as many air pockets as possible. And you don't want to stuff it too tight because you are going to have to twist these. And so you want to make sure you're leaving a little bit of room so that you'll be able to twist it. Okay, now that we're coming up to the end, I'm going to pull it back to release some of the pressure. Just like so. And that's a hot dog. So now I'm just going to twist them. But I'm actually going to tie them off with string versus just doing the twisting method because I don't want this to burst. And so as you can see, I've went in and I've tied them off so that way I don't have to worry about them separating. So now I'm going to repeat this process for all of them. And then when I come back, I will show you how many I was able to get. All right, you guys, so that was quite the process, but as you can see, I have all of my hot dogs done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these in the refrigerator and allow them to sit overnight so that the cure has time to work its magic. If you didn't want to wait overnight, you could have done a cure accelerator, but I chose to not do that because I'm going to do these tomorrow. So the next time you guys will see me will be tomorrow morning when it's time for us to put these bad boys in the smoker. All right, y'all, so it is the next morning. I am now preheating my smoker to 150 degrees. I'm essentially doing a cold smoke right now. I'm only going to be letting these cook for 2 hours in the smoker because I really just wanted to have a natural element of smoke to it without having to add in any artificial liquid smoke or anything like that. So once this hits 150, I will put the hot dogs in, set the timer for 2 hours, and then we will pick it up from there. And just to let you guys know, if you don't have a smoker, you do not have to do this step. You can add in liquid smoke and you can cook it inside of the house with the sous vide, which you can honestly order off of Amazon for less than $100, or you can boil them. You know, there's many ways to make hot dogs, so you do not have to smoke them in order to get a really good hot dog. Just wanted to throw that out there. All right, y'all, so now that my smoker is at temp, I put my hot dogs in. I'm gonna set the timer for 2 hours and then we'll come back from there. All right, you guys, so I only have about 5 minutes left out on the smoker. So now I'm starting to preheat my water so that I can finish these off in the sous vide. Now I'm gonna have this set to 150 degrees, and this is only gonna take anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours. The goal is for the internal temperature of the hot dog to reach 150 degrees. At that point, for beef, it will be fully cooked. All right, y'all, so it has been 2 hours, and as you can see, that beautiful red color is coming from the smoke and from the meat itself. That's not the casing. That is all from the curing, the seasoning, and everything. So these are actually turning out just the way I want them to. So now I'm going to remove them out of the smoker and let's take them in the house. I mean, look at how beautiful they look. That's no food coloring, you guys. That is just how beautifully these have just smoked in my smoker. So now we're going to take these bad boys inside and finish them off. All right, you guys, so what I've gone in and done now is I've vacuum sealed my hot dogs down, so that way once I put them inside of the water bath, I don't have to worry about any water leaking inside. And as you noticed, I made sure that I did one individually because that's going to be my sacrificial one that I'm going to use to test to make sure that the internal temperature reaches 150. So that way I'm not poking a hole in the big bag. I have an individual one. So now that those are good to go, I can leave those there for a moment while I'm waiting for this to get up to temp. Alrighty, you guys, so I've just gotten the notification that this is hitting around 150 degrees. So it's now time for us to go on ahead and add our hot dogs in. Now, this Rubbermaid container that I'm using here is safe to do sous vide cooking in. But as you can see, the lid itself does not fit this the way I really want it to. So that's the reason why you see me kind of configuring it the way that I am in the video today. I'm probably going to end up buying an actual sous vide container sooner or later. You want to make sure that your hot dogs are fully submerged. Put that in there. And now I'm going to put the lid back on this bad boy, just like so. Put this aluminum foil right around the side. And allow this to do its thing for about the next 1.5 to 2 hours, or until the internal temperature of the hot dogs reaches 150 degrees. Alrighty, you guys, so we're coming up on 1 hour, and because this is my first time making both hot dogs and actually cooking with the sous vide, I want to go in and check the temperature of the hot dog now so that I can kind of gauge where we are temperature-wise and see about how much longer it's going to take. The temperature has been holding really, really well at 150, which is wonderful. But let me just take this out very carefully. And I'm going to check the temperature of this. So I've stuck my probe in, and this is actually already reading at 150 degrees. I'm going to put it all the way in the middle. It's reading at about 151. So honestly, this is actually done, technically. But I think just for my own sake, I'm going to let it go for about 5 minutes more. And then we good to go. Alrighty, you guys. So these went for exactly 1 hour and 30 minutes. I am now going to remove these out of this water. Be very careful because it is hot. And now we're going to transfer these over to an ice bath so that we can stop the cooking process. Alrighty, you guys, so I've transferred these over to some ice cold water. This water's been sitting outside for quite some time. It's freezing out here at my house. So I'm gonna let these sit in here for about 10 to 15 minutes or so that the cooking process can stop. This is also gonna help make it a lot easier to take off the cellulose skin on the outside. All right, y'all, so I allowed these to cool in that ice cold water for about 15 minutes or so, and now I'm literally just gonna cut them and then take off the casing. It's just that simple. And essentially, because of the water, they should just slide right on out. Look at that. Just comes right on out. It's really easy. Not difficult whatsoever. The water kind of helps it slide off. This you throw away. And that, my friends, is a skinless, all beef hot dog. And I don't think I did too damn shabby. Now let's cut this open so that we can see what the texture on the inside looks like, and let's see if it's giving hot dog. All right, here we go. Look at that. I think I did pretty damn good. Look at the consistency of that. That almost looks perfect. Like, I'm a little bit confused as to how I did that. There's no air pockets in it whatsoever. It smells divine. So I think it's high time that I go on ahead, unwrap the rest of these, and then we are going to go outside. I'm going to throw 2 of these bad boys on the grill, and then we're going to do a taste test. All right, y'all, so these are my skinless all beef hot dogs, and I think for a first timer, these turned out pretty damn good. I was able to get 34 hot dogs, and as you can see, these ain't no skimpy hot dogs. These are nice, like, these are some girthy girls, okay? So I think it's high time now that I go out to the grill, cook me up 2 of them, because the most important thing is not how they look, but how they taste. And it would only make sense for me to go on ahead and, grill up a couple franks, because I just went through all this work. And that, my friends, is how I made my very first batch of skinless all beef hot dogs. I'm going to allow these to dry out on a rack for about another 2 or 3 hours, and then I'm going to vacuum seal these. I've just grilled these beauties up, so I think it's time we go in for a taste test. All right, y'all, no more playing games. Let's go in for the taste test. Let's see. I'm a little bit confused. I made a hot dog. Why does this taste like hot dogs out of the grocery store, but just like a little bit like higher quality? I'm a little bit speechless. I don't know how to describe this. This taste, I cannot believe I done made a damn hot dog. Why does this taste like a hot dog? I did that. I ain't gonna hold you. I'm in a state of shock. I cannot believe that I made this. Like, I know a lot of times I'll be trying to be funny. Genuinely, I envision myself making a lot of things on Simply Food by TY, but never hot dogs. For this to be my first time and these bastards to taste like this is actually, this looks like and tastes like almost like a Nathan's hot dog, but not as salty. Oh, I am gagged and gooped. And it's still juicy. Oh my God. I cannot believe I made that. Bye. All right, y'all. So I've gone on ahead and vacuum sealed all of my hot dogs up and I've labeled them. These will last in the freezer for about 2 to 3 months. And if you keep them in the refrigerator, they'll only last a couple of days. So it's best to vacuum seal them, label them, and then put them in your freezer. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. And I hope you guys will stick around. Make sure y'all check out my YouTube channel, Tobias Young.